Thank you very much. Apologies for the interruption. I was giving another talk at the 11th hour down the hall, so I would like to echo what Simon said. Through most of his presentation, we went through many of the same issues at Connections. It's a little bit different concept, and I'll explain that momentarily, but we had many of the same things and almost exactly the same results that he described. And so I want to echo that I will validate his presentation as being accurate from our perspective as well. I want to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about our study and what we are looking at and what the results were, but I want to give you a brief introduction to what Connections is. I know lots of you are familiar with the project, but lots of you are not, and so I want to give you kind of the kind of brief introduction to the project, and I was, even those of you who are familiar with the project, I was asked moments ago by Brandon Muramatsu, who is in the back, about a specific part of the project, and he's been affiliated with us or around the project since the beginning, almost 10 years now, I think. You're older than you look. And so I think even those who have been around the project for a long time still are getting used to the concepts. And because it's all new, as Simon said, this is all new to everyone. We're changing a culture here, and that's difficult. And so we have to be patient with the process. And the faculties are coming around, but it's slow. The students are coming around, but it's slow. And so don't panic. Everything is going well. And the fact that the conferences like this are growing every year, still almost exponentially, is a wonderful sign that this is taking off and going in the direction that we had all hoped it would at the beginning. And again, I'll talk about the Oer Creation and Adaptation. This is our study and the reuse and repurposing and how that is going. Connections briefly is two things really. It's a platform for the dissemination of higher education or educational content. It sits on top of a learning object repository. The learning object repository is made up of all different kinds of things that are modular. It's the subject matter started off in higher education. It is now all levels of education. We have everything from early childhood literacy materials through primary, secondary schools, higher education, graduate level studies, everything all the way to the end to the lifelong learner as well. We started off as an engineering project in the College of Engineering at Rice University. Now it spans all of the disciplines in the world, basically. We cover all levels and all ranges of topics. The project is open, which means that anyone can contribute content to the project. So we have authors. There's no restriction on becoming an author, and I'll talk briefly about an earlier study that we did. Connections has approximately 2 million users. Well, actually now over 2.2 million users last month, and so of those 2.2 million users, only 2,000 create content, and so it's a very small amount creating lots of content. And this is something, again, that there were studies done around open education and around this kind of concept generally, and that's the way it works. If we extrapolate out to other just general creation of content in the world and general involvement in projects, it's always often a very small group who is involved in the core essence of the field and of the momentum of the discipline, whereas everyone else kind of comes along on the side. And so then this is normal. So this is nothing new that we're experiencing in open education. So again, research is starting to validate the fact that we only have a very small users. Wikipedia is the same, very small contributor base, very large user base, and Connections is the same thing. We have the same issues with quality control that Simon talked about, and how do you regulate the quality, because we're open. Anybody can contribute. We're not limited to faculty. We're not limited to anyone. My daughter, who's 11 years old, contributes to the collection. Don't tell anyone you're supposed to be 18, but that's fine. She does it on my account. And so hopefully her quality is good. So the way Connections deals with this, and this is part of the study that we did, and I wanted to explain this a little bit more in depth, is Connections created a lens. And so the lens in concept is that we have professional vetters, or vetters, they don't have to be professional, but they're people who endorse content. The IEEE, which is the large professional society of electrical engineering, is one of the people who endorse content in Connections. And so these are traditional people who vet content everywhere in the world. They've done it for years, many, many years, some for hundreds of years, and they're now part of the system. Rice University vets content. We have different departments within the university that are in different faculties that vet content. And then we have sometimes people aggregate content in a lens and say, okay, this is content that I think is relevant to my field. And so they aggregate content in a field and say music education, and they say, oh, this is all the music education content at OER that I found in Connections, and they put it in one spot and say, here it is. And so that can also be a lens. It doesn't have to be someone who says this is a traditional institution. It can be someone in the open community who says, I'm qualified to endorse content. Here it is. It's endorsed. We name people differently. We have traditional vetters that we allow to endorse. We have other groups that we allow to affiliate with content. And then we have a third group, which is they create just collections of materials. And they're different. They're not necessarily what we call collections, but they're aggregations of different information in the repository. And so those are our three levels of lenses. And the study that we did is surrounding lenses. So I want to make sure that concept is good. Part of the lens concept and the reason that we can do lensing is that we have permanent versioning. So if an endorsement agency like IEEE says, this is valid content, and they put their endorsement by it, and the creator of the content is an engineer who works for a big major corporation, the engineer says, I made a mistake, or the field has advanced, and now I'm going to say, I'm going to change my module, and my information is now going to advance. I'm going to improve it, so that content is, in my mind, as the author, no longer valid. So I'm going to create a new module, a new version of my module. So the author creates a new version. The endorsement engine, or the lens, stays with the original module unless the lensing party moves it. So the lensing party can move the endorsement or not. And this is tricky, but again, it's important when I talk about the study that the endorsing agency can control their endorsement. It doesn't automatically go with the next version of the information. So if the author changes, the researcher does a new study, different information comes out, or improved knowledge comes out, then the endorser can move or stay. The other way is the endorser can trust the author and say, I trust this author, and I will allow wherever the author goes, I'll go with them. And that's more rare, but not unheard of, because if we think of the Pluto is not a planet anymore. Pluto's out, excommunicated. So, yeah. And so if you're a school and you don't have qualified physicists working for you, but you're a primary school and you want to be correct in your presentation of materials to students, then you can say, I trust the Royal Society of Physicists who is endorsing this, and I will go with whatever they say, because that's the institution we're going to go with anyway, so we're just going to let our endorsement flow with them. And so if they're the author of the module, then that's an example of where the author would control the endorsement because the endorsing agency trusted the author and said it's okay. And those situations are the ones we hope for. Those are the ones that more likely happen. Other than that, if it's an individual faculty who created it and the endorsing agency likes the content, but they don't know the faculty, that's more common. And so the endorsement most of the time doesn't flow. The endorsement agency chooses not to have their endorsement flow. They choose to have complete control over the endorsement. So this is, again, relevant to our study, so I will get to this momentarily. And I should ask for questions now, but I want to screw up the time. So just briefly again on connections, the idea of content portability is paramount to the project, moving the content around not just within the system but externally to the system. It's an XML-based platform. We are OER PMH compatible, which means metadata is harvested by all different kinds of institutions, possibly yours. I'm not sure, I believe so. And so our information is available in a whole variety of repositories all over the world. And we did that intentionally because we also wanted to free up the information. This is the intellectual property license that frees up the information in the most compelling way for academics. Academics, as Simon said, was a very important point. Academics need a currency in order to put information in. They need reward in order to contribute. This gives them the reward. Hopefully, as someone also brought up the point, they're not following general practices. You're right. In OER, they're not. And so we have to occasionally remind academics, yes, don't plagiarize. That didn't come from you. Even though it's open, it's CC BY. BY means attribution, so go and do that. So we've had to call a few academics for that. And it's not so much the academics, but there are organizations that do it without attribution as well. And they take it and say, oh, this is open, so here it is. And it's like, no, wait, there's BY. And the academics need that currency because that encourages them to contribute. And we've had societies come to us and say that they love this process because now their information is much more widely used and they can track the use digitally across platforms across the world because the attribution is proper, when the attribution is proper, and because it's generally, there's some good practice going on among groups like this. If they harvest the metadata, they get the attribution with us, and so it's automatic. And so we're seeing lots of that. And this is, again, all important for the study. Everything is modular, and so, again, this is also important for faculty because all the information that can be broken down and picked off. The users like this. It's hard for authors because they're having to create think in new ways, and so we've seen authors become kind of struggling with the concept of modularity because they want to write a big long treatise. That's what they're used to writing. And so when they get to modular content, they're kind of, this shouldn't be broken up into little pieces. That's wrong. It has to all go together. And that's probably not correct either. But it's a struggle because we're changing the culture. It's a different way of creating content. But it's important for the user because the user only wants little pieces. And they want to take this piece and remix. And again, that's the purpose of our study, was the remix. The feedback loops are also important because now everyone can feedback into the system. And our system, the feedback loops come in a variety of ways, one of which is, and relevant to the study, is that the information is remixed into another group of materials. Or the information is edited and used again in a different way. And so that potential gives the authors a chance for more citations for publication, so they're very happy about that if they're academics. If they're not academics, they're excited that their name is used multiple times throughout the world, and they're encouraged by that. And so we found both. The early studies that we did showed again that a small number of modules were used more often than others. Than the general repository. So some of the materials are very, very widely used. Those materials that are more widely used are more likely also to be repurposed. And so one of our early studies said that if a module is used, the popularity is high, then the remixing and the reuse of the module is much more likely to occur. And also when in Connexions you can create a new module out of a derived copy, the derived copy is much more likely to happen if the module is popular. Because it's a good module, people say it's intellectually stimulating, they create another module off of that. And derive a copy of their own and repurpose it for their own use because they can use it in a different way. And so they will redo the materials. And again, the modularity plays into that because they don't have to redo the entire thing. They can redo only a small piece. Multimedia, again, this is impacting the use. The more multimedia the information is, the use case goes up. And if the information itself doesn't have to be multimedia, but if there's a multimedia component with it, then the use goes up. And so then it's because students like the description, they like the physical interaction or the human element as well. So if a professor or someone is explaining the material physically, not just reading text, then the students are much more comfortable in that environment or much more appreciative of the content. Customization, again, this is again just properties of the platform. Again, the information can be customized through our lensing system. The lensing system allows you to put in the color bar at the top with your logo and says who you are. You're endorsing this, and so that when people are coming through your university or through your college or through your school, through your company, we have corporate endorsements as well, they don't get lost. they know that this is something the company endorses as long as they see that color bar at the top. We have one company that's color bar is bright pink, because that way they don't want their people to get lost. And so I don't think that's the company. It's not the company colors. It's just they want the people to know this is our material. We've endorsed this. Again, this can be done in a variety of ways. This can be a full branding where you suck the content into your site. You can draw in the content, only the content you want, into your environment. And so but the difficulty with this is it prohibits reuse or it discourages reuse because it doesn't come with the reuse tools, because this is run on your own server, so it draws the content. It sits on your server then. So you draw the content into your portal, and it sits locally. It's then cached on your local server. So you get more control over the look and feel, but you lose the ability to remix and reuse. So again, that's also part of the study, is that you have to understand that's not part of the study, because anybody that does that material is not available. The software can be run independently of the repository. Enterprise Raptos is the software. It's available independently, and so people run this independently. So again, this is not part of the study. There are lots of organizations now running just the software and not the repository, because their content is either proprietary or politically sensitive. Some governments are interested in the software, and they like the idea of open, as long as open stays within the borders of the country. And so none of that material is available to us, so we can't do studies on that because they won't allow that. And so, or at least we haven't gotten that yet. Distribution can occur in a variety of ways, and again, some of this is available to studies to us, some of it is not. It depends on how the software is run. It's available online. We study all of that. It's available through a download of PDF. And so you can look at the material independently. If it's downloaded as a PDF and then repurposed independently of where you are on the system, we don't see that in the studies. You can order a printed copy of the materials. It comes out, looks like a book. There's someone floating around here somewhere that's one of our books. But it looks just like a textbook. So we have a print engine that goes. That material, again, is distributed lots of times. We don't have any say of where, after it's printed out, we know how many copies are printed initially, but they can also send it to their own printer, and after that we have no idea how many copies are printed. So there's a lot of things we kind of don't know. It's now available on EPUB, so everything is available on the mobile device as well. The business model for the project is we have a consortium of users around the content. Lots of them involved with the lensing process, and so it helps to drive sustainability for the project. The research. So the idea was that we were going to take the lensing piece and say, okay, how do we... the lens is maybe a representative microcosm of reuse and repurposing of content. We use all of the lenses in Connexions except for the Sciavula lens, which is actually the largest lens, but the way that lens is structured, it's different than the other ones, and so we took that lens out. And we wanted to compare the popularity, the number of revisions, and the number of derived copies, and to see within a lens or without the lens. And so, because again, remember, people can just look at the content, they can download, etc. That would determine popularity. The number of revisions, they can revise the content and make a new version of their own content. So authors can revise the content, and also the new authors can come in and make a derived copy. And so there's three things that we looked at. What we found was that the modules of the 3,000 modules in Connexions that were lensed of our 17,000. So only about 20% of the materials are lensed or endorsed by someone. The lensed material were in a higher percentile of popularity than the standard. Average, obviously, for the whole repository is 50%. The lensed material was at 60%. So if you were lensed material, you were much more popular generally. If you were lensed material, your likelihood of revision was, again, significantly higher, almost 50%. So again, that's fairly significant. Again, all the numbers are relative. As a mathematician, I say these are not statistically significant at all. It's very difficult because OER, we don't have enough data to make anything statistically significant. But So that qualifier, as my math professor said, no more of that. So, but generally, these are the results. And the other result that we found was that the lensed content was more than 2.5 times as likely to have a derived copy made of it. And so it's much more likely to have people coming along and saying, okay, this is good content, I'm going to make another content because it's been endorsed or because of the lensing factor. And so again, the results of the study, again, the number of collaborators is slightly higher, increases the number of modules. Wait, that's not right. Sorry. The lens content. The ranks slightly higher in popularity. It's more likely to be revised because it's in a lens or when it's in a lens. And it's also lots more likely to have derived copies made from it. And so, time for questions? I have 2 minutes? 1 minute?
So yes, does anybody have any questions for Joel? What about this?
There are materials in the back on connections, and you can look if you'd like also.
Thanks, Joel. So why? Exactly what's going on here with lensed content?
So,
is it simply that when there's so much stuff and I need to try and choose what I want to work on, lensed content provides a filter, so that's what I'm going to work from, because the rest is the danger that it's not so good? Is that the basic explanation here? Or?
So the other thing that I will tell you as a university math scholar and a former mathematician is that there's no cause and effect, it's correlation. So so we will speculate from here on out about this cause and effect. There's a couple of things. That's one possibility. Another one is that the lens material is of higher quality because either it was higher quality going in and the endorsing agency came along with the lens initially, and that's sometimes the case. The other thing is that the material that's lensed, the endorsing agencies are, in many ways, these are the professional vetters of content. They're corporations who do this for a living. They're professional societies who do it for a living. Universities who do this for a living. And so that's sometimes the reason that the content is it's maybe a little bit better quality, and so people are much more likely to use it and then derive copies because they want to base their work on a good quality start rather than kind of guess, is that really good over there? So I'm speculating because we haven't done the qualitative side of the analysis yet. It's the next study probably.
I'll come to you in a minute, Andrea. There's a question here.
One question, the agencies you mentioned, the endorsers or endorsement agencies, are they self-appointed? Are they deciding to become one, or is there a mechanism to become? Just linked to that, do you think it would be valuable for this to think of a quality framework that could somehow be related to this based on a consortium of agencies willing to be endorsers? Because I know quality seems to be kind of a taboo word when we talk about open content, open education, but I think it could be a friend rather than, it has to be taken as something that could be also community-based quality. There are some initiatives that are in this area, and I know several of them. But so, would it be a value to have a community-based quality framework in this?
Yes. So, to answer the first question, to become an endorsing group, you don't have to be a member of anything. We control 2 of those so far, but all you have to do to get to be an endorser or an affiliator is to ask, and you are. The last piece, which is much more like a favorites list from Amazon or any of the other sites that you can create favorites of this or that, anyone can have that. And all you have to do is come, and you have to have an account, which means you have to memorize your own name and your password. Other than that, you can do whatever you like. And so anyone can become an endorser or make a lens. I think the answer to your second question is yes. It would be very much, and we're working with. I don't know. We have not. There's no formal agreement yet, but we've tried to write grants and things with Merlot. Do you know Merlot? So Merlot is a group in California that started and is now an international organization as well. And they have lots of endorsers and lots of faculty vetters of content. And so we're trying to work with them as much as we can to form that very society. Again, nothing is official. We're just talking, but we're working very hard to make that happen because our two organizations fit together just perfectly. So it would be really nice to have that as a kind of a cohort to build on the lensing. We agree. So.
Okay, I'm conscious of time. I know it's not quite such a rush for coffee and biscuits today. Andrea, if you've got a question that you'd like to ask, I'll just have this as the last question, and then we can break.
Thank you. It's about the contributor side now. If someone produces some content that they consider high quality and they'd like the content to be endorsed, is there any formal procedure to say, for example, they have to submit the content to a group of people and say, please endorse my content? So how does that work?
So good question, and it's different for different endorsers. So we don't control any of that. We allow the endorsing agencies to control that. So IEEE, you have to submit through their formal process. I know we've talked to them. They're experimenting with a variety of different models of how to do that in the open world. And so that would be a nice group to, if you're engineers, that's a nice group to talk to about this. We have other professional societies who do post-publication review or pre-publication review. The ones that do pre-publication review means you have to submit to them first before you can publish, and then they will endorse or not, and then if they don't, you still publish, but not with their endorsement. Other societies say we would like you to publish, and if you're a member of our society, then we will review your work, and so that's the way they generate the revenue for their sustainability of the society. And you have to be a society member to be endorsed. And so it's just different for every group. Corporations, we found, they're almost all affiliates and not endorsers. And there's a legal subtlety in the United States that if you endorse, you're liable for the content, for the quality of the content. If you affiliate, you're not. So it's a language, semantic language in the U.S. So most of our corporate endorsers are not endorsed, but they're affiliated, and their affiliation is lots of times you just go and submit something to them and say, will you endorse, or will you affiliate?
Okay, well, I'd like to say thank you to Andrea, Joel, and myself. The presentations, hopefully they were informative, and thank you very much for your time.